G'day and welcome to part 3 of our Bridging the Gap series. The last bit we're going to do here today is variants. So these are ships that are already in the game that we think can be slightly modified to do a particular role that might save them having to do a whole nother ship.
Well, they can repurpose a lot of these, ships with very little effort, and yet they fit the role so well. It'd be a bit of a shame to make an entirely new ship just to.
So below me, I've got Haze. And then I'm Execute, and off to my right here we have...
It's Algared, and yes, I remembered push to talk.
Alright, so we've kind of gone through the ships and we've had a look at every single one. And we've nailed it down to a few that we think are quite good choices for everyone concerned. And the first one we kind of came across was, under Misk, was the Starfarer. And we think it's a really obvious choice that if you remove the modules, and I'll have to say we've got 3 variants here, but all 3 variants are if you remove the modules off the back, so the refinery and the fuel canisters, there's a couple of different variants you can have there. And the first one is a version of the Star Lifter.
I can totally see that because the sides come down and it goes over a vehicle and it literally clamps in from below, and you could lift anything. Nova tanks or other vehicles, or maybe even like outpost station equipment, like mining rigs and other things. Stuff that it could drop down onto the ground.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I could easily see the Starfarer being a Star Lifter, and it kind of fits. The Star Lifter, Starfarer. It's got that name synergy there. I wouldn't even see needing to have sides. I just take off the canisters, have tractor beams or whatever at the top. It comes along, lands, tank or whatever, drives up behind it, it hooks onto them, takes off, and there you go.
It's almost a purely external upgrade too, because you'd be losing the fuel tanks and the arm and that gangplank along the back that you can walk along. And in some cases, you might even be able to keep it there so you can go out and check the vehicles in flight.
Yeah, well, I actually thought one version would be to keep the gangplank. Mm-hmm. And then, the crew hops out of the tank, goes along the gangplank, goes in the ship when they're doing transport. When they're getting close, they go into the gangplank, hop into the tank, get ready, lands, off it goes.
Kind of a drop shit variant. I just said drop shit, but I meant drop ship variant. Yeah, and you could do the same thing. And if it was even small ships, you could even use it kind of like a mini carrier in a way. That'd be kind of cool.
Here's another to pick up your dropship idea. Mm-hmm. Because the Starfarer is so huge, you've got the tank pickup at the back, the big ramp in there. You've got a company of infantry that actually comes out with goes with the tank as well. So it becomes a tank. It becomes a ship, not a tank. But it becomes a ship that can do.
You could almost have a mini garage in there as well for ship repair. That's not a bad idea either, or vehicle repair, I should say. Rather.
Yep. And the Gemini version already is armored.
There you go. And I think last look, we mentioned the modules, so moving modules around like with the Pioneer, we could see it doing that as well. That was another kind of idea we had for it. And the last one,
pre-made ones.
Pre-made ones that you would buy at a factory and have it delivered. Excuse me, I got the hiccups again. And then the last one we kind of have there for the Starfarer is a tugboat variant, which would be more using its tractor beams to move things around, but it's a ship that would work for.
And tugboats are slow and sluggish, and it's got the power for it. I could totally see that used as a
I could see the Starfarer doing that role. Mm-hmm. Another role I could see it doing is actually a hospital ship, because it's so big. You gangplank at the back, you make that into a flat deck. That's your hospital ward. You've got storage down below. The Starfarer is just one of those ships that you could repurpose it into anything just because it's so big.
On the second level where it looks down over the cargo area, you just make that a second floor, and you've got another floor for beds and other stuff. It doesn't need that if you're not doing cargo anymore.
And when if you do your crew variant, if you're doing your Starlift, you do the same thing, and that becomes your infantry's
barracks
habitation area, barracks.
Yeah.
So you only really need to module 2 of the areas on that ship, obviously the cargo bay and the outside. So that's not a lot of work, especially when you consider the outside is really just removing the containers and putting some kind of light source to say, hey, this is a pick-me-up laser tractor beamy type of thing. So
you could even put cargo claws that come and pick up a ship from those areas. Just 1, 2, 3, 4. There's all sorts of things you do.
And put a skin on it, and you're done, type of thing.
Yeah.
So really, at the moment, the Gemini is really just a skin for the Starfarer, and it wouldn't be a hop, skip, and a jump to do that again. And I actually reckon, as a module, maybe not exactly a variant, you could put this on either of the two ships. So you could have an armored Tug as an example, or a normal version. I think it works for both. It'd be really cool to see as a module. Anything else to add to that one before we move on to the next one, guys?
No, I think it says. Move on to the next one. We're talking about the other one we've considered heavily is from Crusader Industries, the Genesis Starliner.
Yeah, now this one was kind of hinted a little bit when it was concepted, and just as a caveat at the start of it, we actually think all these little variants we're going to mention can be mixed and matched. So if you have a section of seating, you can have those seats pulled out and a different type of floor put in, so to speak, that changes the variant. So if this ship is 3 or 4 levels, how many levels is it? 3 levels high? I think it's 3. 2 levels. You could actually change the levels backwards and forwards and top to bottom to fit in whatever you mix and match your heart desires. And I actually think this would make this just such a better, stronger ship, because at the moment it's very just human transport focused. Why not just make it transport in general? So Algared, do you want to tell us some of those variants we thought, or modules we came up with?
Yeah, well, one of the modules we thought of was just having cattle, having the cattle stalls, so or cattle pods, and being able to transport livestock.
Yep.
Or even vehicles, drive on, drive off. So a different variant of the Starlifter.
Level, you could fit any size of vehicle in there. You could put Nova tanks. If it was just one big open, like when you do with cargo planes today, it's just one big open hull. You can fit a bunch of Nova tanks or other larger vehicles and literally drive them in.
And that vehicle would really just be a modified version of a cargo variant. So you'd be putting locking plates all over the floor, and whether it's cargo or tanks or other ships, even, you can just mix and match what you want to put in that area.
No, that's right. Even like cargo in general, you don't want a second floor. You just want locking plates, and you can just stack it up as high as you want.
Yep. And so that again, you could have your whole bottom floor in cargo and still have your top floor in people, if that's what you want to do, which is a kind of a bit more realistic way to go about it. Like, because I see, how do I put this? I see transporting of humans more like boats than aeroplanes today, because when you go on a holiday, you might want to take your car with you, or you might want to take your dog with you, or you know what I mean, like you might be moving your entire house when you transfer from planet to planet. So I don't think having an entirely one ship thing is, yeah, you could realistically do it because your house could go in another ship, but I think it would be kind of cool that this holiday type vacation-y thing makes a lot more sense to me if you can take a variety of different things.
But when they were concepting the Gemini, I got the impression that those ideas were things they were thinking of already.
Genesis, wrong ship, but you're close.
Yeah, sorry, but Genesis Starliner. I was trying to avoid saying Star because I was thinking Starlifter, Starfarer.
It's all good.
But the idea they had was that it could do those other things. Yeah, it's a passenger ship, but you could take bits out and make it a high passenger, the high end passengers. You could take it out and do more cargo.
We're just taking it a step further and saying you could turn this into a pure cargo, or you could turn it into a vehicle transport, which is something they've been looking at. It's something we actually do need.
My biggest concern with the Starliner is its size. Based on what they said it could do, to me, it just seems too small.
Yeah, and I have no doubt that it's going to increase in size. The other variant that we didn't mention was obviously like a prison ship variant. Whether you make the whole ship a prison ship variant, that's fine, but you could even just have bounty hunter modules that, so you might be sitting up top in first class and your bounty sitting back in wherever while you're transporting it.
in hibernation.
But I actually could, visually, Con Air. I had that Con Air moment when you pitched this earlier, Haze, and I was like, oh, wow, they're all in the orange jumpsuits and there's guards walking around and they're all, with their taser and all that. It'd be cool.
He's in his manacles with, his orange jumpsuit, and he's sitting next to a box of chickens.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm thinking more like the entire ship, and they're all chained down in their seats, and and you've got the guards on patrol, and it's very metal and industrial looking, and very proper jail setting. I could see that ship as well, but the ability just to give this ship a bit more flexibility, because I think it's probably one of the most inflexible ships at the moment, and I know a lot of people that just want to fly it like the people that play those airplane simulators. That's their ship. That's this ship that they buy.
I could see it even
Also
being.
it is one of their most role-specific ships. So they've talked about variants, but they don't want to sell it. At the same time, this is one of the most flexible ships because of how easy it is to just take everything out and put an entirely new module in.
And I could see this being also redone as a kind of an Air Force One type ship.
Yep, I can see that too. Where 100% can see this. I see this as probably like one of the ships that they could very easily and quickly turn around modules for very, very quickly. Because you could literally just have that same module duplicated, 10 times on one floor. And so it's just making that module and then going, here it is, and then boom, 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 boom. You have the layout however you want. I could even see a kind of like really deluxe, like a Learjet type version where it has a lot of the like the bling in it. Obviously, the 890 jump would be better, but you can put a pool table in, or you could put in like a cocktail bar or whatever. I can see that all as well. But is it required? Possibly not as strong as the variants we mentioned before, because it's more work for less outcome.
Anyway,
but when you talk Learjets, I've got to say, I actually think that's where things like the Connie Phoenix is more that Learjet single passenger type idea, or small cap passenger, whereas the
600i module as well,
and the 600i, and
that's what I meant.
But the Genesis Starliner it's bigger than that. It doesn't fit that role.
I'm just saying that that modular system would have the flexibility to go there if they wanted to. Not saying they should. In fact, I don't think they should. I'm just saying that having the ability to make a small module that's duplicated multiple times gives a lot of flexibility to this ship. I think there's a lot of potential in it that just hasn't been seen yet. Anyway, moving on to the next one.
Speaking of modular ships, we're totally going to segue into the ship of modular ships, the Caterpillar. Basically, from the very beginning was talked about modular compartments that could be customized to do any sort of role. And this is one of those ships that it may be like a Swiss Army knife, not a master of all, but it is definitely can be an industry focused ship of choosing. Like if you put enough modules in for salvage or for mining, this thing is not it can sort of do mining, it can seriously do mining. It's a strong.
And one of the big things that I think goes with that is the fact that previously the CIG has said that every one of those modules on the Caterpillar has its own life support system. So there's redundancy in each system for life support, which means it doesn't matter if one section's got its doors open, the other sections are still cool because.
And some of the modules they mentioned previously were things like hospitals. I think they called it the cut shop, which is the salvage variant. Yeah, chop shop, that's it. We had a search and rescue variant. We had like a bunks variant. They're just like a troop transport ship. So, was there any others that you guys remember? They're just the ones I remember.
I could easily see a prisoner transport, like very cheap and nasty. That could easily fit.
So the point being is this kind of falls into a very similar bracket, in my opinion, as the Gemini Starliner, where you make that one module and it's duplicatable as many times as you like. And so if you use the analogy of the Caterpillar, it works back to the Starliner as well as forward to this one.
The unique thing about the Caterpillar is that all of its modules have access to space, which is something a lot of these other ships don't.
So and that makes it really good. And the fact that you've got those life support systems on each module, you can open the second module, but your first module could still be shut, and you could still be working in there and doing everything you want, and not have any problems with Atmo or anything else. Whereas,
and the nature of this ship, it is kind of a bit hard to speculate, because literally you could almost take any form of utility or any type of profession, and you can make a module for it. So I could see the Gold Dolls opening, and it's a repair variant, and you drive, even if it's very small.
They even had repair variants mentioned and chop shops mentioned.
Make one module that does an entire profession, but you can make multiple modules that cover each of the roles of the profession, making it a focused and specialized ship. You put a drone room in, it's got drones. You put in a sort of repair-based module, like a workshop, that's there. And then you've got storage for extra components, modules, and materials. in order to do those repairs, suddenly you have something that is multifaceted. And the same with salvage. You've got salvage shop, you've got salvage-based drones, then you've got salvage-based whatever they want of cutters, like little suits to
Yep.
go on. This
And
thing can
it's got
take
tractor
multiple
beams as well.
faceted assets because of the number of rooms.
I'm going to chuck a spanner in the works for you guys. It's something that we didn't talk about earlier that I've just come to my mind as we've been talking. What if there were modules that weren't just one module wide? So to give you an example, you get a salvage module that's 2 wide, and a part of it is a refinery, and a part of it, not a refinery, like a compactor, and a part of it is just bringing the cargo in. So when it opens, it's a larger module, and it just takes 2 slots. Could you guys see something like that being a factor?
Yeah, I could see different size modules.
I could see some modules with the external components, like an arm, to be able to do something else, The Caterpillar has so many options open to it thanks to the whole design of it. That each one is compartmentalized and independent. At the same time, they have access to outer space, which, very few ships do.
Puts it in that similar vein of the Endeavour, where it's got different size modules. Sorry, Agrid.
And the other thing is, when they were doing ATV early on and they showed us a Caterpillar, we actually saw a lot of those different modules in concept. So the living quarters, the chop shop, the hospital. And also in that, I've seen on the forums, people said, hey, what about a module that enables the Caterpillar to actually house a Cutlass Red, which gives it the hospital variant, so it's kind of late to the end and bits stick out and other stuff.
See where can I just interrupt you there specifically on that?
Variant? I'm done. So go.
I was just going to say, you see the gold doors open. You just put different doors on it, where that whole door comes out, and it's like a landing bay, and literally the Cutlass can just back up and land on it. Like, it's a no-brainer to me.
Yeah.
Again, if they're willing to be a bit more flexible with the modules, like at the moment, the only module we have is all the same. But if you can make so the doors open in different ways, or you could actually make customizable sizes of those modules, that ship could literally be one of the most versatile in the entire game. And we know it's a jack of all trades, much like the Constellation. And they both are, at the moment, the only 2 ships that sit in that middle range gap that we've been talking about this entire time, and that we need more variants of those.
Well,
that's why.
Even if you do so much as get rid of the cargo lift and put a cargo ramp, and suddenly it's a ground vehicle transporter.
Yeah,
there's so much you could do with this ship.
In fact, you could actually. We do know the doors actually lower to the ground, or can turn into ramps. But again, a modified version of that door that goes wider, and it can go. It doesn't have to go wider as in outside the ship. It can just go wider along the ship, so the vehicle can get onto the ramp, and then it basically can that door could actually have a turntable on it to get the vehicle into the ship. That's what I'm talking about with flexibility.
There's lots of things they could do.
Yeah, instead of going, we need a whole new ship, let's just be really, make really concentrated, complicated modules. It could be awesome. And what's to say you can't make another ship that carries less or more modules of the same modules?
Well, one of the things that, I don't know whether, and I honestly can't remember if it's still a thing, but originally the Caterpillar the idea of it was 5 modules, 4 modules, 3 modules, 2 modules, 1 module. So you had the core bit, but then you could add the extra modules in. So you had the front module was always there, the tail module was always there, but then the other 3 modules were either add-on or not. And I don't know whether they're still there or, 4 plus a tail.
4 plus the tail.
4 plus 1.
4 plus the tail and nose. Yeah.
All right.
But I can tell you the main reasoning for that right off the bat, and it all comes down to thrusters usually. I know the individual modules were going to have their own thrusters, but I think they kind of did away with that as time went on. And there's a lot of math involved, and just having the extra thrusters on each module was just too complicated. It would have been great if you could have just had a really giant scalering version. I think it would have been really cool, but to work it out would have been an utter nightmare.
Yeah, I suppose in a sense that would have made it into 5 ships rather than 4 that have had to develop.
And you would have been coding them as separate ships, but they all would have looked the same. So at the end of the day, it's better to have different looking ships than the same ship that looks the same just because you can.
Do you know what? I think that as we get closer to a PU release, they'll look really heavily into perhaps not producing more ships to fill roles, but perhaps filling out the variants to better fill out the roles of what they already have. And I think once we start seeing them introducing it, because at the moment they are really hands off. We're not doing any more variants. They don't like variants too much unless it's a small little ship like a cyclone or something, you know, like a land vehicle. When they start introducing variants for big ships we already have, I think we'll know we're almost very close to release.
It's one of those things where you can, why make a variant when you can make a whole new ship? That literally, like, what's the
because it makes them money in sales.
Makes them money, but also like sometimes the amount of effort, not always, but sometimes the amount of effort is at the point where it's only a little bit more effort to make it a whole new ship. And the Caterpillar example that I just gave then is one, but it's the same thing with the Starlifter. Like the Starlifter is a very simple variant that you could say, as we've suggested, from the Starfarer to that. But why would you do that when you could also very clearly make it more defined and perfected for that role? Whether instead of an ad hoc thing, because like if you do go back and look at the Starlifter as the Starfarer as a Starlifter, I should say, what do you do with the cargo bay? What do you do with the kitchen's quarters and stuff like that? Because the Starlifter itself, again by nature being through Drake, I think it's going to be very tailored towards combat dropping. I just don't see a MISC ship in combat. Like none of them fit that.
Starfarer Gemini is like a militarized version of a Starfarer.
But it's made with Aegis. So Aegis is super. But we're getting into semantics here. Yeah, but real, like generally speaking, MISC doesn't do combat. Let's just put it that way. And again, that ship is not really tailored to combat with the way it moves. But we're going into semantics and things that we'll disagree on.
I'd say the Genesis Starliner is made for combat because it's got some of their most heavy-duty shields.
But my point being, though, that or something that's tailored more specifically towards it, and you can very clearly see the tailored solution is the better way to go. So it all comes back. Like I think variants. Like, I don't know, like, when I sit there and think about it at the end of the day, would I like variants, or would I like a whole new ship? And I kind of come to the conclusion that I prefer the whole new ship. And that's with every variant I can think of. I
disagree with that. I think there's a middle ground that you can meet where you do want new ships, but I think seeing more variants, being able to see a ship and I say, I wonder how that's configured because I'm not sure what they're doing.
That's right.
That is interesting.
And the Retaliator is a classic one. Like, I think of a Retaliator in use with the modules we've got available. And I'm flying Anniverse and I see a Retaliator. Is that configured as a missile boat? Or is it just a cargo ship?
Well, then I've got other variants like the Freelancer Max. When I look at that, I'm like, well, they've got to do so much remodeling on that ship to get that to work. Why don't they just make another ship completely? Can still be MISC, just make it different. Why not?
But, I mean, if it's a modular system, like if the Starfarer was an example where it would be less modular because we're customizing a ship we already have. But when you look at things like the Starliner and the Caterpillar, we're not remodeling the whole ship. We're only doing those select modules that go on the inside.
And you sell the modules off anyway. So in terms of sales, you do that. But in terms of gameplay, I actually think the modular thing where when I fly up to a ship and I'm scanning it, is it just a missile boat? Is it a cargo ship? Is it a troop carrier? Not knowing what configuration the ship's been put in, that's going to change the way I approach a ship. Whereas if I come across a ship and I know, that's a missile boat, see ya. I'm not going to even tangle with it if I think it's foe. I'm going to go. Whereas Retaliator, it could be a merchant ship, or could be a missile boat, or could be. I might inch up a little closer to try and get a better read.
It's definitely interesting. And I think I probably might take a little bit of flack for this, but I personally think some of the ships would be better as standalones for the reasons Algared's just mentioned. I look at it like a lot of people love their modules because it makes their ship have more positives and less negatives, because if it can do more, it's less ships I've got to buy. It's that simple. But ideally, at the end of the game, the game itself and the replayability for us, isn't that extended by having more ships instead of variants? And it's working on the game scenario and being in the game scenario. And once you can differentiate that, you start to look at a slightly different perspective.
My answer to that is yes and yes.
I think there's a middle ground. You're both saying some very extreme things. Myself, I like spice in my life. I like not being able to see something and immediately judge it. I like a bit of mix of both. And I think there's a middle ground there.
Yeah, look, I
That
like
makes the stew so much tastier when you got a bit of spice and you got a bit of something.
when you got a bit of celery in the soup.
Oh, God,
Like-
not this again. You guys that are listening, you were not here for that conversation. But
Yeah.
But look, I like the different ships. I like the different looks. I like in a universe that every ship looks exactly the same. And so, yeah, we absolutely do need all of those different ships and the different looks. I love that idea. That's the thing that
I want my cake
Star Citizen.
and I want to eat it at the same time. I want both. Why can't I have
But I also want to have that thing like Haze is saying, where I approach a ship, it's got modules, it's modular. I don't know what makeup it is. I don't know whether that hammerhead's just made up as a fighter killer.
It gives more options. It got to keep you on your toes. It's got to keep you thinking. You've got to do more of your homework. That's beautiful. I love it.
Yeah, and so I think bring on the variants, give us the modules, but keep going with the multi-ships.
Don't stop making ships, but please continue to do variants.
all right, I think we'll wrap it up there, guys. So let us know what you think in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I've been Execute. This is below me.
Haze.
And off to my other side
Is Algared. And let us know what other ships you think of as well.
Yeah, we'd love to hear from you. Your thoughts and suggestions are always welcome, and we love discussion, and we check all our comments and try to reply to them as many as possible. All right, so we'll catch you guys next time.
Take care.
All right.